Hello everybody, this is Starman and welcome back to Let's Play Gabriel Night, the 20th Anniversary Edition. Well, we're having a very eventful day 2 so far. We've ripped off our buddy the cop, we've gotten kicked out of the home of the woman of our dreams, we've annoyed the owner of the local voodoo shop, Curio Emporium. And now we're here at the Voodoo History Museum, about to talk to Dr. John and see what he knows. Given the man's size, that doesn't seem advisable. Alright, let's just talk to him.
Could I ask you a few questions?
That is why I am here.
So, voodoo.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
Historical voodoo, or the voodoo currently practiced in the city?
Let's go with historical.
Tell me about historical voodoo.
Very well. I will start at the beginning, Mr. Knight, and will go on from there at your prompting.
Sounds good.
As you may know, voodoo is a grassroots religion, formed by the mixing together of many different African tribal religions and Anglo religions, such as Catholicism or Protestantism. In other words, it is a religion born of the African slave trade. But African slaves were imported not only by the United States, but also into the West Indies, where the French and Spanish ran plantation islands. Prior to 1803, the New Orleans area was owned by France. The French Creole in those days owned many African slaves. But the Creole did not permit their slaves to gather, giving no chance for voodoo to breed here natively. The Creole also knew enough about the corrupted pagan practices of the West Indies slaves to ban the importings of slaves from that region.
So how did voodoo come to New Orleans?
After the Louisiana Purchase, American legislators relaxed regulations. Slaves were permitted to gather. The Americans also removed the ban on West Indies slaves. Around the same time, a slave revolt occurred in Santo Domingo, what is now Haiti. Between the lifting of the ban and the Haitian Revolt, West Indies slaves began pouring into New Orleans. Some of them were free people of color, freed or escaped slaves. Some came with their white owners who were fleeing from the revolt.
And what happened when the West Indies slaves got here?
They brought voodoo with them. The native slaves were more than enthusiastic about embracing it. It gave them power, Mr. Knight, if only in the form of a communal bond. Among the first meeting places were the Bayou St. John and the shore of Lake Pontchartrain. The early voodoos were heavy snake worshippers, worshipping the one they called the Great Zombie.
Tell me more about historical voodoo.
By 1817, the voodoo activities were beginning to cause fear among the white slave owners. An ordinance was passed to forbid slave gatherings except in designated public areas at designated times. The time was Sunday afternoons, and the place, Congo Square. The slaves and free people of color gathered to dance simulations of their voodoo dances, right in sight of Creole society. Of course, they also continued to meet in private for the real thing.
Tell me more about historical voodoo.
There were a variety of kings and queens at first, voodoo priests and priestesses. But from about 1830, a single power emerged. This was a voodoo queen named Marie Laveau. Marie Laveau ruled voodoo in New Orleans for many years.
Are you sure you can't tell me anything about voodoo?
I've given you as much detail as I can, Mr. Knight. Look around the museum if you desire more information.
Okay, so that's it for historical voodoo. Let's move on with Marie Laveau.
Tell me about Marie Laveau.
There were actually two Marie Laveaux, mother and daughter. Most people thought they were the same woman. Her continued youth added to the mystique. The original, the mother, was also known as Widow Paris. It was she that began the empire.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
The Laveau tomb, where one or both of the Maries are believed to be buried, is in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. It is a popular shrine for practitioners and tourists alike. I myself take tours through the cemetery on a regular basis.
Really? Do you have any running this week?
No, but the cemetery is open to the general public as well.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
When the Widow Paris began to practice, there were many voodooians in the city. By 1830, she was Voodoo Queen of all New Orleans. The Widow Paris was a hairdresser for rich Creole ladies. She also paid household servants to spy for her. Between the two, she knew everything about everyone who mattered in New Orleans. She was not above using her information to appear psychic, to intimidate, or even to blackmail.
You sound as though you admire her.
For a black woman in the mid-1800s to gain power is an incredible thing, Mr. Knight. However she achieved it.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
She kept a pet snake, danced with it too. She held traditional voodoo ceremonies out by the lake. She took herself seriously, very seriously. But she was not above selling tickets for her events to curiosity seekers. She was not above using voodoo any way she could to make money. That is for certain. But if she had been in another line of work, in another age, that would have been interpreted as entrepreneurial genius, rather than a sign of fraudulence.
Hey, you don't need to convince me. I admire anyone that can actually make a living. Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
It was Marie Laveau who defined the voodoo that is truly and uniquely the voodoo of New Orleans. She invented hundreds, if not thousands, of spells, potions, charms, and incantations. These form the basis of the modern practice, not to mention the folk tradition of hoodoo.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
Her daughter, Marie Glapion, took over when Widow Paris got old. Most people thought it was the same Marie Laveau. Both Maries encouraged that point of view. The Widow Paris died in 1881. Marie Glapion had been reigning a long time by then. After the death of the Widow Paris, other voodoo queens surfaced, and by 1890, the cult was fragmented again. Marie Glapion just sort of faded away.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
You have heard everything about Marie Laveau that a layman might expect to understand.
Alright then, let's move on to current voodoo.
Tell me about current voodoo.
Many people think of voodoo in terms of magic spells or gree-gree. That kind of practice is actually called hoodoo and is only a part of true voodoo. Voodoo, the religion, has a strong following in New Orleans. In fact, it is growing quite rapidly. There are several voodoo churches or temples in the city, and others all across the United States. African Americans see it as a tradition all their own. Whites, and there are many in the religion, are attracted to it because they think it is exotic. I personally am more interested in the history of voodoo. Some of the new movements are copying Haitian or even African voodoo, but it is the voodoo of New Orleans that I find so intriguing.
And fun fact, they did a great job of researching the various traditions of voodoo for this game, so everything they've discussed here is totally accurate. But let's continue on.
What exactly is hoodoo?
Hoodoo refers to magic folk traditions of the South. Hoodoo is a bastard of voodoo. Many of the Gree are similar, but hoodoo does not have the religious aspects of voodoo.
What do you know about the voodoo murders?
The killings in the newspaper. I know they have nothing to do with true voodoo in New Orleans.
What makes you think the voodoo murders aren't being done by local practitioners?
Voodoo is a popular boogeyman, Mr. Knight, especially in New Orleans. Anyone can pretend to use it, just as anyone can pretend to be a black belt in karate. And for the same reason, to intimidate. I know voodoo in this city, Mr. Knight, and believe me, it is not about killing. Even the police have stated that the killings have nothing to do with local voodoo.
Well, let's push him one more time.
So you know nothing about the voodoo murders case?
I neither know nor care to know, Mr. Knight. My only possible interest is in how it might affect the public's attitude towards the museum. So far, it has not been an issue. No one has even had the bad taste to bring it up. Until you, that is.
What do you think of New Orleans?
It is the only city in the United States, as far as I am concerned.
What is it about New Orleans that you so admire?
It has a real culture of its own, Mr. Knight. Amid the horrid blandness that is Americana, New Orleans alone has a voice.
Spoken like a true New Orleanian.
What can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
It is one of the important ceremonial nights in voodoo.
What else can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
I am afraid I do not know the origins of St. John's Eve. I only know that it was a night of ritual long before voodoo came to New Orleans.
Seems awfully strange that the historian would not know the origins, but in case you hadn't guessed, Dr. John is playing dumb on quite a few things.
Do you know what caprice and call means?
I fear my French is not all it should be, Mr. Knight.
Do you know anything about snakes?
Ah, you have perhaps noticed the museum snake, Mr. Knight? They are beautiful creatures. Do you not agree? And the tourists seem to associate them with voodoo.
Is this snake yours? Do you use it in your practice of voodoo?
I admire the spirit of the snake, Mr. Knight. But snakes, like the museums, can be quite dangerous to handle.
You didn't really answer my question.
I think I did, Mr. Knight.
Do you know anything about animal masks?
I used to have some antique African totem masks, but they were on the point of disintegration, so I removed them.
Are you sure you can't educate me further about animal masks?
Unfortunately, I do not know much about totem masks. The practice was more African than American, and that is not my area of expertise.
Okay, thanks.
Tell me about yourself.
Me?
Yes, if you don't mind.
What is it you wish to learn?
Well,
Why did you open a voodoo museum?
The subject has fascinated me all my life, and I wanted to help preserve the cultural heritage it represents.
What kind of background in voodoo do you have?
Let us just say I cut my teeth on it, Mr. Knight. It is in my blood.
Do you do anything besides run the museum?
No, the museum does not make me a rich man, but my material needs are simple. I prefer to focus on my one true interest in life.
what are your own religious beliefs?
My beliefs are too personal and too complex to discuss with a layman, Mr. Knight.
Just tell me anything.
I am originally from the West Indies myself, you know.
Really? What brought you to New Orleans?
I was drawn here for personal reasons.
Just tell me anything.
I am a vegetarian.
Really? I can't imagine living without meat.
That must be the hunter in you, Mr. Knight.
Just tell me anything.
I am not an easy person to get to know. I am a very private man.
Isn't that unusual for someone in the museum business?
Not at all. My displays speak for me.
Yeah, and as somebody who's worked with a lot of academics, that's quite common. Trust me, I'm a librarian. We know these things.
Just tell me anything.
Not everyone can come see the museum, so I occasionally do public speaking on the subject of historical voodoo.
Anything coming up that I might attend?
No. But then you have me all to yourself right now, do you not?
Actually, I can't think of a thing.
Then let us discuss something else.
So how's the museum business?
Those who truly seek to understand are few, Mr. Knight. But even one can be an audience.
Sounds about like my shop. So where do you pick up all this stuff?
Oh, here and there. We accept donations of any pertinent items.
Do you ever get any wackos in here?
You mean, besides yourself?
Yeah, besides me.
I do not care to make those kinds of judgments, Mr. Knight. All are welcome here.
You're a big guy, aren't you? You work out, play sports?
I do not play basketball, if that is what you want to know.
You racist
Who,
jerk.
me? No, you just look like such a natural athlete.
I do find ways of keeping fit, Mr. Knight. After all, our bodies are temples.
Yeah, in Gabriel's case, his temple has undergone several acts of desecration.
You sound like Grace. I should get the two of you together.
Is Grace your wife?
No, she just acts like it. So what do you think of our summer weather? Have you ever seen it so overcast or so muggy?
It is unpleasant. The heavens are not pleased these days.
Nice outfit.
I prefer simple cotton to dead flesh, Mr. Knight.
I'll have to remember that. This is quite a place you have here.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. I have dedicated myself to the preservation of this unique culture. It is gratifying to see others reap the fruits I have sown.
And yeah, that is our talk with Dr. John.
I'll be going.
Come back again.
And we now have a new location, the St. Louis Cemetery #1 on our map, as well as the Moonbeam residence. A sign on the front door of Gentia's home reads, "Tuning with the Spirit Realm, back on June 22nd." So we won't be able to talk to her until day 5 now. Although the classic version, you could go talk to her right now, but we won't do that. And we could go to the cemetery right now, but we don't need to do that just yet, so we won't.
I knew you'd miss me, so I came back.
Really? I forgot you were gone.
Actually, one thing I wanted to try.
I'll be back later.
Have fun.
You can offer
Hello,
people...
Dr. John.
Glad you could return to us, Mr. Knight.
You can offer items in your inventory to people.
Do you know this woman?
Magentia Moonbeam, yes. She is a local voodoo-yen. There are many of them in New Orleans. They often do business selling gris-gris, telling fortunes, providing luck, and occasionally misfortune. I often refer those who seek a deeper experience with voodoo to her.
Okay, so plot hole averted.
Could I ask you some more questions?
Of course. I also find our dialogue stimulating.
Okay, we have nothing else to say to him, but at least showing that to him does kind of explain how maybe we might have been referred to her. Barely. Well, okay, we can't just wander over there, but she'll still say, Dr. John referred you to me, even though he doesn't. So, back to St. George's Books.
Hello, beautiful. It's me.
The excitement of seeing you is killing me.
Got a minute, Grace?
What's up?
Well, I'm going to pester you with all the new things I learned about today.
What can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
St. John's Eve? Never heard of it. Must be a local custom. New Orleanians love to party.
Do you have any idea what Cabri Saint-Caux means?
No. Sounds French, though.
Which is weird, because now that I think about it, I think in the third game, we find out that Grace knows French. Of course, she may have learned it after this, and she definitely learns German before the next game, but, yeah, a little weird.
Do you know anything about animal masks?
I'd rather not hear about your sex life, Knight.
Do you know anything about Marie Laveau?
Wasn't she a big voodoo queen before the Civil War?
That's right.
Well, you've just heard everything I know about her.
Alright, messages.
Do you have messages for me?
Nope, none right now.
And now, a research. Request research.
Could you do some research for me?
Sure, what?
I need you to look up a Madame Casino.
Madame Casino? Is she related to the murders the same way your friend Molly Aghetti was?
Grace, Casino's at least 70.
As if that makes a difference to you. Okay, I'll see what I can find. Well, it's about closing time.
So it is. Good night, Gracie.
Good night, Gabriel. And try not to dream, okay?
I'm getting more deja vu here. I'm keeping quiet during this part because you actually get to see a little bit more of this dream as time goes on, or at least in the original version you did. I think you get a little more in this remake too. Alright, so that brings us to day 3. June the 20th. My birthday, no less. Drawn to the halls of learning, I sought there to conspire. But it was in the city of the dead I found my heart's desire. And yeah, they changed that poem. In the original game, it was drawn to Bacchus's abode. Because there was a puzzle that required you going to a bar. But because they've changed the game order around a bit, limited where you can and can't go, you can't go to the bar until later.
I'm so glad you could join us today. I've got messages when you want them. I also checked out Casino. There are multiple listings in the white pages. I got the page, but you'll have to figure out the right one.
It's just one more annoying puzzle to torment you.
Now, are you gonna tell me what happened yesterday with Malia Getty, or is it just too embarrassing? Don't tell me you actually got to see her.
All the stars out tonight.
Gabriel, you don't seriously think she's interested? She can have any man in the city. You know, men with bank accounts.
You underestimate the Knight family's tragic poet samurai appeal. When Daddy married Mom, she was the hottest catch in town.
I always suspected there was something fishy in your family tree. But seriously, I think you should be careful.
Meow, Grace.
I'm serious. I don't know why, but I have a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach about this.
It's called jealousy, my dear. And you're right, you should be jealous of Malia Getty. As should every woman on this planet.
I just... never mind. I'll just fix these books. Your life is in your own slippery little hands.
The point is to get it into somebody else's hands. And soon.
Wait, are we talking about your life? We're not talking about your life, are we? Anyway, check the newspaper. Times dated June 20th, 1993. Gabriel scans over an interesting front page. French Court of a Spanish Twist. Gabriel's horoscope for the day: an evil eye is upon you. Change your course before it's too late.
Lighten up.
Under the cultural events section, there is a notice about a lecture on African religions. The lecture is at Tulane University.
Lighten up.
Alright, well, we'll also ask Grace about our messages.
Got a minute, Grace?
What's up?
Do you have messages for me?
Your pal Mosley called. He left a message that they are interrogating a suspect this morning, and you might want to be there.
Might.
Sounds fun.
I bet.
Do you have messages for me?
I've given everything to you.
Alright, well, got a rather full roster for day 3. And we will pick up with that next time. We'll see you then.